Welcome to another Friday fun-filled edition of Second City Sports. We're live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeena McGee, which is she. I'm Sidney Brown. Hey, that's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidK80. Once again, it's SidK80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app. You want to know why? Because we said so. That's why. Also, so you can catch our other 5 live shows throughout the week. If you happen to miss them, you can watch them and listen to them at your own leisure. Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app today. Speaking of Sports Zone Chicago, you can follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Sports Zone Chicago. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. If you want to catch the podcast of Second City Sports, you can do so by subscribing to War on Anchor. We're available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. Make sure you type this in your search engine boxes on those podcast platforms. You ready? WARR on Anchor. One more again, as you kids would say. WARR on Anchor to catch our podcast edition of Second City Sports. And you can follow War Media at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, at War Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We are unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. And if you have an opinion or a question during our now 2-hour extravaganza, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comment section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. But if you decide to troll and or do something stupid, Lakeena will give you the beer lane beer boot.
Bye-bye.
We have a guest lined up as a maybe not as filled as the 27 Yankees, but we have valuable people coming on today to discuss the topic of sports. First up, coming up in the next half hour, we'll have our good friend of the show from NBC Sports Chicago, Rob Schaefer. He's going to hop on with us to talk Bulls and the NBA. Are you panicking as a Bulls fan? Are you worried, or are you just laying back in the cut waiting for the playoffs to start? We'll talk about that and a whole lot more with Mr. Rob Schaefer coming up in the next half hour. And then our second hour, we'll have our girl back for her bi-weekly commentary on sports and entertainment. It's our girl, Manika from KXRB Radio. She's going to hop on in the next hour to give us her thoughts about the world of sports and a whole lot more. Lakeena, let's get started with the Friday edition of Second City Sports by talking about March Madness. The rounds of 16 and 8 are not have kicked off. There was some great games last night, and as we start to see the shape of these teams as the field of 64 started to dwindle just a little bit more. We'll start with the first game as the first number 1 seed was knocked out of the tournament, and that's the Gonzaga Bulldogs. I had to win the whole thing. Now my bracket's officially busted, but no one cares about that. Folks care about this. The final score in the West region is Sweet 16. Gonzaga loses to Arkansas 74-68. For Arkansas, they had a great game, especially from Jalen Williams. He had 15 points and 12 rebounds. Drew Timme could have been his last game as a Gonzaga Bulldog. We'll see. But he had 25.7 rebounds and 3 assists. Lakeena, we talked about Arkansas on our last episode on Monday. This is a good, scrappy team. Give head coach Eric Musselman full credit for turning this team around. They went to the Sweet 16 last year. They were there this year. Now they're going to the Elite 8, and they're going to face another tough opponent, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But Arkansas, this was a surprise to many people, but if you really look at it, it shouldn't be too much of a surprise.
I said this before, and I said this during our last episode. The first 2 rounds from Gonzaga should have been a warning sign. And I know that folks want to say, "Oh, well, maybe Memphis is good." And yes, they are. And Georgia State was actually a pretty decent 16 seed, but still, that should have been a warning sign to some of you. And are we ready to have that conversation about Gonzaga yet? Are we? Are we ready to finally have that combo? Because I feel like, the excuses are being made. Some people say, well, the referees, it was the refs that cost the game. I saw that the other little thing that ESPN's doing. I think, oh, please. You could probably say that the reason why they even got this far was because of the refs. But, again, you are ready to have that conversation. But here's the thing with Gonzaga. Their last, 5 times they, as a number 1 seed. Ready? They lost the national title game last year to Baylor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Lost in the Elite 8. In 2019, lost the national title game in 2017, North Carolina. And they lost in the second round when they were number 1 seed. They were the first, number 1 seed to go down that 2013 tournament. So, that's right up there with Oklahoma. And they're now tied with Oklahoma as of most times as the 1 seed without a title. Now, look, Oklahoma doesn't have a rich, basketball history. They've got, they had some, nice, setups in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. They're kind of on their way up there with Porter Moser. We'll see how far he gets them in these next couple of years. But even still, Gonzaga is one of those teams where they play a really good preseason schedule and go into holiday tournaments and such. Then again, granted, the West Coast Conference was a little bit better this year. St. Mary's had a really solid, great team this year. They kind of been leaning the last couple of years. San Fran made the tournament for the first time since '98. But even still, that conference isn't top to bottom isn't very good, so they're not battle tested. And look, they were close to losing to a lower D1 that's transitioning to D1. So none of this should be surprising to anybody. Now, look, Timmy, Chet Holmgren, those are really great players and such. But once Arkansas did what this is sort of like the old from the 90s Arkansas teams where you had
Nolan Richardson, 40 minutes of hell.
Not necessarily to that level, but their defense, Jalen Williams, definitely blocked out some of those guys. Jaden Note, who's probably one of the best centers that was best guards in I think both of them were both SEC, all SEC teams. They were definitely led the way there. He had 21 points, Note did, and made some key shots and such. The transition. I mean, once the second half started, you can tell that, okay, maybe they're on this one because their transition, they kept Gonzaga going to the transitional, even when Gonzaga had a fast break, Arkansas was right there to kind of cut them off at the pass. Their defense, is very stifling. And you know what? I mean, look, Arkansas, this isn't their first rodeo. They weren't afraid. And look, Eric Musselman, to his credit, he sort of used it as motivation. Look, nobody said that they had a shot. And this is a lot of those guys are back from last year. So look, I know, I don't want to get into a long tangent about it since we got other games to talk about, but I think for me, Arkansas is showing you why that. Look, you could play the whole they lost early in the SEC tournament or blah blah blah, whatever. But it's what you do now, and what they're doing now is nothing short of remarkable.
I don't want to put this out there, but I'm going to for conversational purposes. Is Mark Few, is he starting? Will he start to hear whispers about his job within the next couple of years if they keep doing the same thing? Because remember, they were the Cinderella program back in the late 90s, in the early 2000s. Now that's a national powerhouse. No, they don't get the top blue chippers like a Duke or North Carolina or Kansas, but it's a national program now. If they keep doing this again next year and the year after that, does he start to hear whispers about his job?
I mean, we'll get to his former top assistant, who people thought probably would have gotten the job, but he has I don't think he has no problems. But I think his team lost, or we'll get to them in a second. But yeah, I mean, look, I think Mark Few, he's doing what he can. Look, he got Chet Holmgren from here in Illinois, so it's not like he can't get the recruits. It's like, can you do enough to win the whole thing? We saw what happened in the national championship game last year against Baylor. Baylor ran them out of the gym. So it's one of those things where you're probably like, you know what? I don't know. Look, you go against a team like a Baylor or an Arkansas that can kind of stifle you down and kind of chain you down on the defensive side. And if you can score, you can win. So it's sort of one of those things where you kind of say, look, street yard brawl, as Brendan Haywood called that national championship game, is very similar to what happened last night with Arkansas. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's just other parameters. I don't think it's him.
You're listening to Second City Sports, the Friday edition, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. We're live in the 11 color. Sid Lakeena here with you, reviewing Thursday's games from the NCAA tournament. Let's go to the South region. Number 1, Arizona goes down to Houston. The Cougars get the best of the Wildcats, 72-60. Jamal Shedd led Houston with 21 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists. And Arizona's Dalen Terry had 17 points, 6 assists, and 6 rebounds and 3 assists. Houston started off the game on a 14-4 run. Lakeena, we told you guys this in our last episode on Monday. It wouldn't be surprised if Houston pulled off this upset. We saw what they did last Sunday afternoon against Illinois, and they continued that momentum again last night against Arizona.
Yeah, Jamal Shedd and Kyler Edwards. I mean, I believe both are all AAC guys. And look, that's a veteran squad, so it's not like. Yeah, I know they lost, two of their top scorers earlier this year, but look, I think this is a testament to what Calvin Sampson, what a great coaching job he's done with that program. You saw Akeem Olajuwon there yesterday; that was really cool seeing him in San Antonio. And look, great to see. Look, we'll get to some of the other guys that were there, but yeah, look, I think Houston, did what they're supposed to. They did the same thing against Illinois. They stopped you with the defense, and also too, Arizona just wasn't hitting their shots, and I think lack of experience, I think, got to Arizona a little bit because no one thought Arizona could get this far. They're ahead of schedule. I think people need to kind of just, I know that Arizona fans, thought that maybe they'd be up there, especially once they won the Pac-12 tournament and the regular season. They got the number one seed. Well, look, Tommy Lloyd's got that team on the way up, and assuming that Mathurin stays and such, I think like Arizona will be back. I have no doubt about that. The future was bright for Arizona. Now, as for Houston, I think that their defense, also like I said, their experience. Look, we saw what they can do. They were really close. They've been to the Final Four. They were really close again last year, going back to the Final Four. So we'll see. I mean, look, I think Houston could definitely be, especially since they're playing basically only about 2 hours away from their campus. So, but yeah, I mean, I really like what Kelvin Sampson's done to for that program, kind of getting it back up to prominence.
Let's stay in that South region as Chicago's very own Juwan Howard, the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. Their season is now concluded because number 2 Villanova and Jay Wright's crew holds off the Michigan Wolverines 63-55. Hunter Dickinson for Michigan had 15 points, 15 rebounds, and Jermaine Samuels for the Wildcats had 22 points and 7 rebounds.
Again, experience. I think experience sort of got them in the end. Look, I think Villanova is another one of those teams where you got a veteran, guard play. You got Connor Gillespie, you got Justin Moore to say, and those guys have been around forever. So look, this isn't their first rodeo, and look, the fact that that experience sort of caught up with Michigan. I think they couldn't hit their shots. That their threes they were hitting earlier in the tournaments. It's really cool that Villanova is showing you that experience, and look, they're going back to the Elite Eight. And again, this is not their first rodeo into this. They actually are the underdog against Houston, believe it or not, by 3 I saw in the latest odds. So they might use that as motivation. Who knows? But it'll be interesting what they do, because I think, look, again, experience. This is really the experience factor that's coming in, and you saw that last night with Villanova. Michigan made it interesting for a little bit, but look, Gillespie hit some big shots late in the game. Moore made some big shots at the end of the game, near the end of the game, to kind of keep Michigan at bay. And Jermaine Samuels, another one of those seniors who no, this isn't his first rodeo either. So I think, look, the experience definitely was a key here for Villanova.
And let's stay in the West region in the last game from last night. Number 2 Duke, and congratulations to Coach K earning his 100th victory in the NCAA tournament in his coaching career. They hold off the Texas Tech Raiders 78-73. Adonis Arms for Texas Tech had 13 points and 7 rebounds for Texas Tech. They hung in there close. Actually had the lead for a while, but Duke was able to make some plays down the stretch.
Yeah, they really did. And I feel like, what did you think about this, Sid? Because I feel like this is sort of one of those kind of underrated games, I feel like.
It was. I thought Texas Tech was gonna hold off Duke for a while there, and we talked about it previewing this game on our last episode on Monday. Lakeena, who was the first one to score to 90? It didn't get quite that far, but Duke caught fire at the last few minutes. Texas Tech started to miss their shots. I thought, in my opinion, that was the difference in the game.
Yeah, like I told you guys about Tech. I've been telling you guys the last the whole season. Tech depends on the three a little bit too much for my liking. And once they didn't hit their threes, and look, Jeremy Roach, I think scored the last 10 points of that those last few minutes for Duke. So including some big key free throws. So he was sort of the driving force there. And I think they're playing inspired. I know people don't like Coach K. They're not big fans of his, but I feel like, there's this sense of I think they're playing maybe, hey, let's win one for Coach K. And look, I think Roach said in his interview with Tracy Wolfson last night, if you guys caught that after the game. But look, I think Duke did just enough. I mean, they were able to kind of get through that defense, because you thought that maybe Tech's defense would kind of just sort of keep them at bay, and they did. They had some great steals early on, but their 3-pointers, I think they were like 2 of their last 9 or something, which is not good. So they weren't hitting their threes.
You're listening to Second City Sports on the Friday edition right here on Sports Zone Chicago live and in living color. Sid, Lakeena here with you. Lakeena, let's preview tonight. Give a quick preview of tonight's ball games. The last half of the brackets for the round of 16 will conclude tonight at 6:09 p.m. Central Standard Time on CBS. The number 15 ranked St. Peter's Peacocks will play the number 3 ranked Purdue Boilermakers in the East region in the round of 16, and this will take place at the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia. Does St. Peter have another upset in them, or will Purdue hold them off?
Look, you don't want to count out St. Pete's at this point, but look, that East region, no Baylor, no Kentucky, Purdue's the top seed left, the highest seed left in that bracket. If you're at Purdue, you better take it. And look, I think St. Pete's, I'm sure Matt Painter is telling Jaden Ivey and the rest of the guys that, look, don't take St. Pete's lightly. I mean, they're not playing not too far from their campus. And look, I'm sure there aren't that many people at the school, but I'm sure there are going to be a lot of folks that are going to be cheering hard for them. So I think it's probably going to be a very hostile environment. And I feel like, you know what? Look, take the advantage. I think Purdue's got like 2 guys 7 feet or something, or near 7 foot. So take that size to your advantage. And look, score early and score often, and try to put them away early.
At the United Center here in Chicago in the Midwest region at 6:29 p.m. on TBS, number 1 Kansas, the Jayhawks will host number 4 Providence.
Yeah, Bill Self is 8-2 in a Sweet 16 games since he's been at Kansas. So look, this is gonna be a fight. This could be first to 90. I feel like I know Kansas struggled a little bit against Creighton, but they did enough defensively. Providence can play defense very well. Again, another team that depends on the 3 a lot, so that might be a little bit of a fear here. But I mean, you don't want this could be back and forth. This could be one of those games because if you don't, even if you go up on the Flyers early, we've seen the Flyers come back, multiple times this year. So it's not like even if the Jayhawks down them early, they're not going to give up. So they got a veteran squad. So yeah, I feel this could be another one of those those games where you kind of feel like what, there's going to be a lot of people there cheering for Kansas, and being here in Chicago at the UC. Yeah. So they could play that to their advantage. So this could be a really good game. I think this could be a lot closer, but I think Kansas should have this one.
At 8:39 p.m. on CBS, it's the second game of the East region from Philadelphia. Number 8 North Carolina against number 4 UCLA Bruins. Lakeena, as I said before in our last couple of episodes, Hubert Davis has done a fine job with North Carolina. I think he's going to get some recruits this offseason to help them be better next year. But everything else is gravy from this point on. They barely survived last Saturday afternoon against Baylor. Well, they're facing a tough UCLA team who was in the Final Four last year. This should be another classic game.
This should be another. This will be the first time that these 2 teams have met in the tournament. So this should be another good one. But I think again, experience. I think you got a lot of those guys back from that Final Four squad from UCLA from last year. So I know one of their guys is questionable. I forgot I think it's Juquez, I think. But it should be one of another class one. But I think UCLA's experience is what will get them there.
And the last game of the night will be at 9:00 p.m. Central Standard Time on TBS from the United Center here in Chicago. Iowa State versus Miami. You talk about 2, I don't want to say Cinderella teams, but I'll definitely nobody gave the University of Miami credit of making it this far. But I don't think too many people had Iowa State making it this far either.
Yeah, this could be one of those coin flips. I mean, both of you have a defense, totally different defensive styles. And look, this could be first 60. I know there are going to be a lot of people cheering for Miami, with the Charlie Moore connection, from to Moore Park and such. So this could be a really good one. And look, this it's weird that this is the last game from that region. I don't know who made the schedule, but I guess, but I digress. But yeah, this could be a good one. I think look, no one really had either one of these teams, making it this far in the Midwest, but both took down, some giant killers to get there. So I feel like, they're from power conferences. It's not like these guys are from smaller conferences. So this could definitely be one of those playground battles. But we'll see. It should be a fun one. I mean, look, both teams are not, this won't be their first time, for some of these guys, and some of these guys are transfers. So, and they've been to the tournament before with their other schools. So this could be one of those things where who has that, that mentality, sort of that defensive mentality, but should be a fun one.
You're listening to the Friday edition of Second City Sports. We're live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakeena here with you. We have a few minutes left before we switch over to Bulls talk and, of course, the NBA with our good friend Rob Schaefer from NBC Sports Chicago. Lakeena, since we have a few minutes left in this segment, the schedule for tomorrow, Saturday, is set at 5:09 p.m. on CBS from San Antonio. We'll have Houston versus Villanova in the South region. Who takes this one?
It's a tough one. I know that Houston is a favorite. Last I checked, they're a 3-point favorite.
It's a home game for them.
Yeah, San Antonio only a couple hours away from from Houston, so and their campus. So that it might be a hostile crowd there, but both teams have experience. So it'll definitely be like who wants it more. And I heard some people say it's gonna be like how it's called because how physical Houston is. So, but again, who hits their shots, who makes those stops, and this could go down to the wire. I mean, look, I had Villanova coming out of this region, oddly enough, so I guess I'll stick with them. But I wouldn't be surprised if Houston pulls it out.
I believe I did too. I forgot all about my brackets after last weekend, so so it's like watching a gravy train for me at this point. And at 7:49 p.m. tomorrow on TBS, in the West region, we'll have Arkansas versus Duke at the Chase Center from San Francisco. I'm cheering hard as hell for Arkansas, but I just got that sneaky feeling that Coach K and his crew will get it done. But it's not going to be easy though.
This will be their first. Meaning tournament wise. You got all the way back to the '94 national championship game. Of course, Scotty Thurman hit that 3-pointer, that go-ahead 3, I should say. Of course, President Clinton, who was there at the time, who was an Arkansas grad, was there cheering hard for them.
I'll never inhaled.
Okay, but yeah. I mean, look. I think Arkansas. This could be another one of those classic games where you gotta say experience, for a lot of these Duke guys. I mean, I'm sure the pressure will be on them. They're the higher seed. They're going to be favored. Again, this could be one of those. This could be like first to 50 because you can't afford to have that big of a start that they had on last night against Arkansas because Arkansas will make you pay. So it should be one of those, interesting, another classic ones. I mean, look, I love that fact that you get upsets, but it all comes down when it comes down to it. Like some of the best programs sort of step up, and we'll see who step up here. Now, again, I think Duke, I know our good buddy Layla Rahim, we'll get to her news about her in a little bit later in the show, but, I know she said this is also enough for Duke, maybe not. I mean, look, it's not like, Arkansas would be their first time for Arkansas. For a lot of those guys at Duke, this would be the first time, going this deep into the tournament. So we'll see what happens, but it'll be a close one, but I'll say Duke, but don't be surprised Arkansas sneaks in there.
It's all about the hustle plays, and as you said, who wants it more, especially during the crucial moments of the game. Rob Schaefer from NBC Sports Chicago, who covers the Bulls like a blanket, will join us to talk about the Bulls and the rest of the NBA. Are you worried as a Bulls fan, or are you just laying back and chilling and said, bring on the playoffs and we see what happens? We'll get into that a whole lot more with our guests coming up next. You're listening to Second City Sports. We're live in living color. I'm Sid. That's Lakeena. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago. NBA Thursday, the Bulls dropped their second straight 126-109 the loss at New Orleans. The Bulls are 42-31 with the setback. Zach LaVine led the scoring for Chicago with 39 points. Kobe White had 23. The Pelicans got 30 points from Devontae Graham, 25 from CJ McCollum, and a double-double from Jonas Valanciunas. Up next for the Bulls, they'll try and snap the skid tomorrow night when they visit Cleveland. The Blackhawks put a 2-game winning streak on the line tomorrow when they visit the Vegas Golden Knights. Chicago with a 4-3 win at Los Angeles yesterday. Alex DeBrincat had the shootout winner. Colin Delia made 43 saves through overtime in just his second start of the season. Spring training Thursday, the Angels beat the Cubs 5-4. Today, it'll be the Cubs taking on the Rockies. The Giants beat the White Sox 9-6. Today, the Sox will face the Mariners. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Nobody protects you from mayhem like Allstate. I'm a speed bump. Did you hear what I said? I'm a speed bump. And if you have cut rate car insurance, the cost to reattach your muffler could really be a bump in the road. So switch to Allstate, save money, and be better protected from mayhem, like me.
Based on coverage and limits selected, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. In most states, prices vary based on how you buy. Allstate Bar and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Have you wanted to speak a new language but thought it'd be too difficult or take too much time? Then try Babbel. In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel teaches you conversations that you will actually use. With 14 languages and lesson topics like travel, business, relationships, and more, you'll learn what matters most to you. Babbel. Language for life. Learn a new language with ease. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's BABBEL.com.
Welcome back to Second City Sports, the Friday edition on the hashtag Friday Fun Friday, whatever the hell we want to call it. We're live and in living color right here at Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid, that's Lakeena, and for this break for our next guest, if you want to, if you have a question for our next guest regarding the Bulls or the NBA, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in questions or comments in the comment section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. You can follow our next guest at Rob_Schaefer on Twitter. That's once again Rob_Schaefer on Twitter. He's our good friend of the show. He's Mr. Rob Schaefer, who covers the Bulls like a blanket for NBC Sports Chicago. Let's bring him in right now. Good afternoon, Rob. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing good.
Try not to panic.
Yeah, yeah, you and everybody else, huh?
Yes, I mean, last night's game against the Pelicans, look, I was turning back and forth from March Madness, so I wasn't really paying attention too much. DeRozan's out with that growing. I'm not panicking yet, Rob. I was telling Sid before we started recording, but I'm not too relaxed. I'm kind of like right in the middle. So what you think of these last few games of Bulls? I think a lot of their holes are showing.
Yeah, listen, it's been a tough stretch at 3-10 in their last 13 games. This defensive slide that they've been on has been happening really since the initial injuries to Lonzo and Caruso. Now the offense has taken a step back as well. Familiar themes, opposing guards are really killing them. The offensive boards are killing them. There's just a lack of force or physicality that they're playing with that Billy Donovan has spoken about a couple times. It's just been a tough stretch really at the worst time. I mean, this is the time of year you want to be peaking, right? And this is probably the worst basketball they played over an extended stretch the last month or so, all season. I guess panic, though, kind of depends on what your expectations are. I mean, I think there was a thought early in the season that this team was on a path to proving it was a title contender. That looks like a conversation of the past at this point. I think at this point, the focus has got to be on staying out of the play-in, staying probably out of that 6 seed, and trying to get the most advantageous 4-5 matchup that they can. They're even slipping out of the possibility of getting to that 4 seed and having home court advantage. And they're a team that's, been amazing at home this season, 26-10. The UC has been rocking, but on the road, they're an under 500 team. So even if they're in that 4-5 matchup against a team like Boston, not having home court advantage is a possibility that would scare me if I were the Bulls. So, panic depends on expectation. There's still 8 games or 9 games to turn it around. They've got a couple winnable ones here. The Cleveland one on Saturday is important. Then you've got Washington and New York. Those teams are out of the picture at this point. So maybe you could bank some wins there. But nothing's been guaranteed. I mean, lose to a 30-win Pelicans team. They lost to a 25-win Sacramento team last week. It's been a tough stretch. They got to find a way to pull their way out of it without potentially even having Lonzo back for the rest of the season. So it's dark times. It's not over yet, but they certainly have a lot of issues to iron out.
Speaking of injuries, Rob, you brought his name up, Alex Caruso. Of course, his impact has been felt ever since his return from that wrist injury a few weeks ago. But it seems like to me, unlike early in the season when most of the team was healthy, that his energy trickled down to the rest of the guys. And now, do I blame him for what they're going through right now? No, but since his absence, as you mentioned, they've given up over 115 points a game. Caruso's doing his thing, but it seems like the rest of the guys are not picking up on his leadership. Well,
it's difficult, right? It's difficult to expect, first of all, one person in general to come in and fix all that was going wrong, and especially a guard, right? I mean, it's a little bit limited what you can do if your primary skill set is point of attack defense, individual defense. That's valuable, but it's difficult to plug every hole that the Bulls have right now just from that one spot. So I think that's a part of it. And also, as impactful, and I think the numbers before he came back would show that Caruso probably had a little bit more individual impact just strictly by the numbers than Lonzo did. It was really the combination of them together that was so dynamic, and it really was anchoring the Bulls defense, because then you have two guys kind of flying around causing havoc. It's a little bit easier to, plug multiple holes at once when you have both of those guys. So I think that is still the thing that kind of hangs over the Bulls is, what would the season have been if Lonzo had never gotten hurt? What could it be if he was to return? The problem with forecasting return for him is that he's not even running right now. He's obviously had knee surgery coming up on 2 months ago. We're coming up on the, end of that 6 to 8 week timeline that they thought he was going to be back on. He's not going to be back before the end of that at the very least. And, at the end of the month, they're going to reevaluate his ability to run. If he doesn't come out of this little 10-day pause here, having made significant progress in his ability to sprint and cut, it's really coming up against it to get back before the end of the regular season. And then it's just a difficult proposition to expect him to jump straight into a playoff series and be the Lonzo Ball that he was early in the season, So, Caruso has had his moments, I agree, where he's impacted them. They've had a couple games like that Toronto game. That was a big win last week at home, where they were really forcing turnovers, getting out on the break. And that was the identity of this team when they were, so playing at such an elite level at the beginning of the season. So there have been moments, but unfortunately for one guy, it's just hard for the team-wide buy-in to be consistent when it's really just one dude. And, I don't want to totally downplay the efforts of other guys. Like, I think Zach LaVine had a couple really nice defensive sequences last night. Vooch tries, DeMar tries, but this roster was constructed to have Lonzo and Caruso healthy and have them kind of buoy the defense. Whereas you just have a lot of guys that they can put forth as good an effort as they want. They're just not defensive players. DeMar DeRozan and Nikola Vucevic specifically, and Zach to an extent. They just haven't been defensive players in their career, like positive impact defensive players. They've had moments of getting to that level this year, but ultimately that if we had known coming into the season that those guys were going to be asked to, carry that burden for the most part, and it has been that way mostly because of injuries, we wouldn't have expected them to be a good defensive team, and they haven't been for a little while now.
You actually already answered my question about Alonzo and his status, so you already covered that. So I'll go to my next question. Io has kind of showed some progress earlier, but he's doing rookie tendencies, making mistakes and such.
Yeah.
Kobe White had 23 off the bench last night. Is there any word that maybe they might switch that up a little bit?
Well, no word. I don't know if Billy would tip his hand, but I mean, you could just tell by the way he was playing them last night that he was willing to go to Kobe over Io. I mean, he pulled Io early in the third quarter for Kobe, and then Caruso got in foul trouble, so Io had to come back in. So I think he still ended up with more raw minutes than Kobe. But Kobe was in the closing lineup, when the game was, still within reach before the Pelicans kind of pulled away at the end there. So, I think the case with Kobe and Io, it's been a topic of conversation all year, right? Where it seems like one person's rotation opportunity has to come at the expense of the other because this team is so guard heavy. You just can't play this many guards, heavy minutes. Or else the size disadvantage is going to catch up to you. And that kind of has caught up to the Bulls to an extent. It seems like Billy's kind of going with the hot hand approach to this one. And I think that's probably the only way you can handle it. He started Io last night, I would guess, for defensive purposes because, New Orleans, even without Brandon Ingram, has a pretty dynamic backcourt with Devontae Graham and CJ McCollum. But then once it was evident that it was a hot Kobe night and Io, I don't think you can criticize him for it because he's been so amazing this season, but it was always going to happen that the wall was going to hit at some point. He's been playing 36 to 38 minutes a game for months on end. He's been starting at point guard. I mean, it's a lot for a first-year player. So I think that it's probably his little offensive slump of late is probably a product of that. Kobe looked good last night. He did end up fouling out. And, even for Kobe before that game, it's not as if it had been a hot stretch for him before he had a really poor game against the Bucks. And that kind of slump had stretched back to the West Coast trip of last week. So, I think at this point, if you can get positive contributions from one of those guys a night and then ride them more minutes wise, that's probably the way to go when the team is as healthy as they're going to be this year, i.e. with DeMar back because he missed the game last night with a groin strain. Both of those guys will be coming off the bench, and I think that balance will be a little bit easier to find. But, it seems like Io is the defensive option when Billy needs that, and Kobe is the shooting, the instant offense option. And I think the Bulls will just have to play matchups and see which one of those they need more, in a specific game moving forward.
You're listening to the Friday edition of Second City Sports right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid, Lakeena here with you. We are joined by our guest and good friend of the show, Rob Schaefer from NBC Sports Chicago. He covers the Bulls like a blanket. You can catch him periodically on the Bulls Talk Talk podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you support it and listen to it. Rob, let's talk about Patrick Williams. He made his return earlier this week against Toronto in limited action. You saw his impact in that game. He played 17 minutes last night, two rebounds, 2 points. Assess his limited playing time for us, and when do you expect that to increase?
Yeah, I think he looked pretty good in the Toronto game, better than I expected. Took 8 shots in 19 minutes, looked comfortable, had a couple nice defensive plays. The problem with Pat is just coming off of such a traumatic injury and such a long absence, they clearly are easing him in, right? Like he's on a 25-minute restriction, but he hasn't really even come close to touching that. Like he played 19 minutes against Toronto. He was down around 17 or 18 minutes against New Orleans. So, there's clearly an easing in process happening. He had a couple nice moments in the first quarter last night, and then the impact, as the game went on, was a little bit more subdued. I think he's looked about as fine as you could expect coming off of the long injury absence. It's a tough situation to drop him in, with the games being as high leverage as they are right now. The Toronto game has definitely been the peak of how good he's looked. It's only been 3 games, so we'll see how it progresses. Again, a couple good matchups, especially that Wizards game and that Knicks game. Those to me, the Bulls have to win those and win those handily and really lay foundational building blocks to go, for the stretch run in the playoffs. The thing about Pat, though, if he can start to progress a little bit more linearly in a positive direction, I think one of the big moves that Billy Donovan has left in his quiver is to potentially move him into the starting lineup if he can get to the point that his conditioning and his comfortability and his comfort and his level of play, allows that to happen. Because, you put him at that 4 spot, it's a little bit more of a defensive presence, a little bit more size. Not that Javonte Green hasn't been a good defensive player this year. He's filled in capably, but your number 4 overall pick who showed such potential last year, you would hope he was the guy that could step into that role. The injury has set him back a little bit, but it would be big if he could play his way into that role down the stretch of the season. I just think with a couple more games, you got to hope to see him get up into that mid-20s, minute per game range and, sustaining a positive impact to know that he might be ready for that increased opportunity.
Okay, let's talk Tristan Thompson for a second, Rob. It's he's a very interesting character. We've known this for a few years now. Do you think Coach Donovan will show more of the Thompson Vooch sort of twin towers? I know they tried it a couple of times. It didn't really work. Are they going to keep doing it? And how do you think he's been fitting in with the Bulls so far?
Yeah, I think Tristan was brought in to bring a level of intensity and championship experience. I mean, he certainly, brought that. He's a messenger of kind of all the things that the Bulls need to improve on. And he speaks from a seat of credibility just because he's won at the highest level and he's been a part of, great teams in his career. I think his role seems pretty set. He's the backup center. I think his effectiveness, you kind of have diminishing returns on it if you play him more than 12 to 15 minutes a night. At this stage of his career, he still, can bring good energy in spurts, still a great rebounder, but never really had the size, to be a traditional rim protector and, losing a little bit of his explosiveness. That shows up when you watch him. The pairing of him and Vucevic in the front court, like you said, I mean, they tried it out, especially in that Milwaukee game in Chicago, just to give the Bulls a little bit of size, a little bit of heft inside. It did, the returns on it were just not great. And I think just on paper, you look at that configuration and it's just hard for the Bulls offensively to survive with, Tristan in the front court and you just take, you put a non-shooter on the floor, I suppose is the best way to say it. The spacing gets mucked up. It's just a little awkward. It seemed a little clunky to me when they ran with it a couple weeks ago. So I personally would be surprised to see that. And, made even more so by the fact that now you have Derek Jones Jr. back, you have Patrick Williams back, you have options at that power forward spot that are probably a little bit better than throwing Tristan Thompson in there. So, I think he was a buyout signing, right? There was never going to be a high ceiling. He was never going to come in and, be one of the best 4 or 5 players on the team. I think he's been serviceable for what he is, which is an energy big. And, if the Bulls are able to turn this around, I think it'll be a credit to his, locker room message delivering, if he's able to, if they're able to instill some of these changes that they need to make down the stretch.
Yeah, speaking of another big guy, you mentioned him, Nikola Vucevic. We were all happy last year when he was acquired from Orlando. We gave AK and GM Mark Eversley all the credit in the world. We most of us logical NBA fans, basketball fans know what Vucevic is. He's a great offensive player. and he's not a great defensive player. But this year, you can ask Lakeena. We talked about this before, Lakeena. She's on Bulls Twitter way more than I am. And I feel like the many Bulls fans are, I'm not saying Vucevic is free of criticism because he's not, but I think that at times with many Bulls fans, I hate to use this harsher term, but Vucevic is the whipping boy of the Bulls failures. And I think at times is a little bit unfair. Talk to us about Vucevic. What do you expect from him going forward as we head towards the playoffs?
Yeah, well, Vooch is a really important piece, especially offensively, and I think the subtleties maybe get lost a little bit. To your point there, like the screen setting, the passing. He's such a good connected passer. His shooting has been really down this year, and I think that's hurt him and hurt the Bulls to an extent. He does space the floor, though. He does still get guarded out there, but when the Bulls traded 2 first-round picks and Wendell Carter Jr. for him at the trade deadline last year, like they didn't think they were trading for a 30% three-point shooter. He was in the middle of the best three-point shooting season of his career, and that continued with the Bulls last year. It's just, been a down shooting season for him, even though over the course of the season, his rim finishing, his mid-range shooting has all gotten better. It's really been that three-point shooting that's lagged behind. Still, at the bare minimum with his rebounding, with his screen setting, with the passing, and with his, interior scoring, Vooch is, like you said, he is who he is. We know that he's an all-star caliber offensive player at this point in his career. He's a vet. Defensively, you always knew it was going to be, it was going to be something that the Bulls were going to need to work around. I don't think he's as much of a zero as people make him out to be sometimes. I mean, he's got decent hands. It's just the mobility for him, right? Just moving laterally, being that kind of dynamic, athletic presence at the rim, protecting the rim. Those are not his strengths. I will say it looked a lot better, and I'm not trying to be a injuries excuse person here, but Vucevic looked a lot better in the team's defensive scheme when they had Lonzo and Caruso working at full tilt, because if you have guys that are getting over screens that are really bothering opposing ball handlers and preventing dribble penetration, it takes a lot off of Vucevic's plate. And I think the last couple months, what you've seen is, that perimeter defense lacking, and then he's getting exposed a little bit more. So, I expect Vooch to continue to produce as he's produced offensively, as long as the Bulls can find him in his spots. I mean, he's had a couple good games in a row, actually, shooting-wise here. So hopefully he can build off that. Defensively, though, it's the issue is there's just not a lot of versatility in terms of the schemes the Bulls can run. So you got to hope that the perimeter defenders can step up and help him out a little bit. Because defensively, like, I know Vooch is not the strongest presence. I have a hard time criticizing him for that, only because it's not as if he doesn't try. And this has been, the story of his career. This is who he is as a player. And to me, if you're, upset with the schemes that the Bulls are able or unable to play with Vooch, that's more of a team building thing to me. Because to me, he's had the big picture of it before this recent couple week stretch here. He's had one of the better defensive seasons of his career, not the best defensive season of his career. He's raised his level to a degree on that end. It's just a matter of how much he's actually, capable of giving. So, I expect Vooch to continue, being that third offensive option, a key, hub that they run offense through. And then defensively, if things turn around and you can get Lonzo back, or if the level of perimeter defense changes, maybe he could get back to his kind of being handsy, getting in passing lanes, getting steals and deflections and things like that, because that's when he's at his best.
Let's talk about the rest of the NBA for a second, Rob. The East is sort of, getting, there's a log jam. There's only a game and a half between first and fourth place. Miami's been struggling. They lost to the Warriors on Wednesday, who did not have Steph, Clay, or Draymond. And of course, Jimmy Butler and Udonis Haslam got into it on the sidelines, like sort of like, the little tip that was, seen all over, social media. Who do you think is the favorite in the East? You got the Bucks, Sixers, Celtics. Can they keep up what they're doing?
I think I got to go Bucks by default. I think those 4 teams, if you told me any of them came out of it, I wouldn't be shocked. I think they all have a puncher's chance, especially the Celtics. I mean, for them to be as hot as they are, I think it's fair to question whether it's sustainable, but the way that they defend, I think, could really translate well to a playoff environment. So we'll see. We'll see how that unfolds for them. Miami's obviously been at the top of the conference all year. Nothing really seems to shake them from an injury perspective or anything like that. They've gone through a lot of adversity. And then Philly's got the star power of Embiid and Harden. I go Bucks just because I just see them as a little bit of a steadier presence than a lot of these other teams. I have questions about, obviously, Harden's playoff capabilities. You have questions about the Celtics, what they're doing. Is it sustainable? The Heat, they're pretty battle-tested, so hard to have too many questions about them, other than maybe, if their half-court offense stalls out a little bit. Milwaukee, just because they just did it, because Giannis is again playing at an MVP level, even though he won't win the award this year. Drew Holiday's having one of the best seasons of his career. They just got Brook Lopez back. They're scary. I mean, look at what they did to the Bulls the other night. And I know the Bulls are playing without Lonzo, but the Bucks were without Middleton, and they still, really routed them on their home court. That's a pretty good home court advantage, I think, against any team that's not the Bulls, because Bulls fans still do dominate Fiserv Forum whenever you go up there. That was a big takeaway from going up there the other night, was that Grayson Allen in his home arena was getting booed loudly enough that it was noticeable because of all the Bulls fans that were there. So that was kind of funny. But no, it's got to be Milwaukee for me, with the caveat that any of those 4 teams could do it. And no, I don't buy Brooklyn as more than maybe a win one series type of team. I just don't know if the depth and the size is there if they don't get Simmons back. So I'll go Milwaukee.
Let's head over to the Western Conference, Rob, and talk about the Phoenix Suns. They get Chris Paul back. They get an important win at Denver last night. Is Phoenix number 1, Memphis number 2, and Golden State number 3. Are the Phoenix Suns the team to be in the Western Conference, or do you see Memphis or Golden State, assuming that Steph Curry comes back for the playoffs, giving the Suns a run, taking over that spot once the playoffs start?
I got to give it to the Suns, man. You just can't take away from what they've done this season. And they were without Booker for a little bit with COVID. They've obviously been without Chris Paul since the All-Star break with his injury. And they're just a machine. I mean, they just don't stop. I mean, they have the top-end star talent. They're the best clutch team in the league. They've got an unbelievable supporting cast. They shoot, they defend, they're versatile. They're well coached. Monty Williams, one of the best coaches in the league. I mean, he was my pick for coach of the year last year. He's in the discussion this year again, obviously. They've got to be I think they have completely earned the benefit of the doubt at this point. I'm taking them over anybody in the Western Conference. The one exception, I think, is if, like you said, Steph comes back healthy, if Clay can find a rhythm here going into the playoffs. I don't know how you count that team out, Golden State. But other than that, I mean, Memphis, I got nothing. I've got, worlds of respect for what Memphis has done this season. The inexperience of the team, and I don't necessarily mean that in a negative way, but just they're a young team. This is kind of their first deep playoff run together. They obviously played in a first round series last year. It would be a remarkable story, but I would just be really surprised if they were able to run through this Western Conference, a loaded Western Conference, in their first, year of being on that contention tier. So I give it up to Phoenix. I hope, though, that Golden State can get healthy and get right and get firing on all cylinders for a Western Conference Finals matchup potentially. Because even if I might pick Phoenix in that series, I think it'd go 6 or 7, and it would just be incredibly competitive. And that Chris Paul Steph Curry rivalry goes back, a long time. And Steph has gotten the best of that matchup more times than not. But you can make an argument this is the best team Chris Paul has played on, to be honest. I mean, even beyond those Lob City Clippers teams, just the level that they're playing at right now. I just realized I'm accidentally kind of picking a finals rematch from last season. But to me, Phoenix has been the best team in the league this season, and Milwaukee is probably the most consistent force in the East. So that matchup, that happening again, wouldn't guarantee it, but it wouldn't surprise me either.
Don't tell those NBA executives that.
Oh God, yeah, I'll say the TV executive. Well, although the Rays were actually pretty good last year, so not they weren't too bad. But last question for me, Rob. Do you see any sleepers? Do you think either the Clippers or the Lakers? Can one of them sort of sneak in there, or can like somebody from the East? Can maybe the Bulls? Or I know you already said the Nets. Nah, maybe not. Or can anybody kind of like be that sleeper team in the NBA to kind of sneak into the finals?
I think the Nets are the best candidate in the East. Kyrie, KD have an argument for best duo in the league. They have holes on that team, but if those guys just get smoking hot for 16 games, it's just hard. Even the best defensive teams don't really have an answer for those two guys when they are really, really on. And with this vaccine mandate thing just being recently lifted in New York, now Kyrie is going to be able to play in home games. Maybe I'm selling them a little bit short. I think they are clearly the sleeper pick in the East. And you just have a hard time picking against them. I still think I would favor Miami, Philly, Milwaukee in a series against them if they get up out of that play-in. But it would be closely contested. So they would be a really good sleeper pick in the East. And then, the Lakers are dead in the water to me. I can't get there with them. Clippers, it doesn't look like Kawhi and PG are going to be back this year, so it's hard to count on them doing anything crazy either. Maybe Dallas count as a sleeper team. Luka's playing at a very high level right now. one thing that this Dallas team does that others haven't, and I know people might still say they haven't surrounded Luka with enough star talent, but they're one of the best defensive teams in the league, which is not what the Mavericks have been for the last few years. Under Jason Kidd, they've really ratcheted things up a notch on that end of the floor. So, matchups provided, I could see them getting out of the first round and then, say they catch a break or something in round 2. Maybe they get up to that 3 seed. I know that's kind of a, high hill for them to climb with so few games left in the regular season. But, when you have a player who to me is the top 5-7 player in the league in Luka Doncic and, a top defense, that makes them a pretty scary proposition come playoff time. So I'll say Dallas in the West and I'll say Brooklyn in the East.
Last question from me, Rob, as we are joined by Rob Schaefer from NBC Sports Chicago, who covers the Bulls in the NBA. Rob, I know that it looks like Joel Embiid from Philadelphia is the leader in the clubhouse for MVP. I know some people say Steph Curry and John Morant from Memphis. It looks like both their regular seasons are over due to injuries. I was watching a couple of debate shows. I'm using that in air quotes, and people are starting talking about Devin Booker. Where does he rank as far as MVP is concerned? Who's your MVP as of today?
Oh, man, that is the $1 million question, huh? I mean, I want to say Jokic. I really think Jokic is the best player in the league. I think he's had an unbelievable impact on that Denver team for how decimated they are. But can you give the MVP to a guy who's the best player on a 6 seed? I'm not sure. I don't love the idea of doing that. But in such a tightly contested race, I think you can make an argument for Jokic, for Embiid, and for Giannis. And then obviously, Booker deserves his flowers. Ja deserves his flowers. Steph, there's this perception that Steph Curry's having a down year, and he is by Steph Curry standards, but his numbers would still be a career year for most people, and they're going to be a 50-win team. I'm going to go Jokic. I don't feel great about it just because of the team results are a little bit below some of these other candidates. But, the season's not over yet. Maybe they make a little push and get up in that high 40s win range, and it looks a little bit better. And ultimately, any of these people I pick, I would have reservations about. So, I'm going to go Jokic. I don't think he will win it, though. I just think the voter fatigue thing, I'm not sure he wins it 2 years in a row. My prediction would be Embiid, but I think my pick right now is Jokic.
All right, that was Rob Schaefer, who covers the Bulls like a blanket for NBC Sports Chicago, and you could listen to him periodically on the Bulls Talk podcast. You could download that wherever you get your podcast. Rob, thank you very much once again for joining us today right here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Continue the great work, my friend, and let's talk again during the playoffs. Hopefully it's going to be a long playoff run for our Bulls.
Anytime. Anytime.
Thanks, Brad. You stay safe.
Thanks.
All right, that was Rob Schaefer from NBC Sports Chicago. Sid, you know what? We're going right to the top of the hour, but we got a lot of things coming up still.
Yes, we have football to talk about. The Bears have made another move at a very important position. Deshaun Watson, now a new member of the Cleveland Browns, he spoke to the media, and we're going to have our girl, Christine Manika, to talk sports and all other stuff in her bi-weekly commentary. You're listening to Second City Sports on the Friday edition. We're live in living color. I'm Sid. That's Lakeena. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago. NBA Thursday, the Bulls dropped their second straight, 126-109, the loss at New Orleans. The Bulls are 42-31 with the setback. Zach LaVine led the scoring for Chicago with 39 points. Kobe White had 23. The Pelicans got 30 points from Devontae Graham, 25 from CJ McCollum, and a double-double from Jonas Valanciunas. Up next for the Bulls, they'll try and snap the skid tomorrow night when they visit Cleveland. The Blackhawks put a 2-game winning streak on the line tomorrow when they visit the Vegas Golden Knights. Chicago with a 4-3 win at Los Angeles yesterday. Alex DeBrincat had the shootout winner. Colin Delia made 43 saves through overtime in just his second start of the season. Spring training Thursday, the Angels beat the Cubs 5-4. Today, it'll be the Cubs taking on the Rockies. The Giants beat the White Sox 9-6. Today, the Sox will face the Mariners. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Nobody protects you from mayhem like Allstate. I'm a speed bump. Did you hear what I said? I'm a speed bump. And if you have cut-rate car insurance, the cost to reattach your muffler could really be a bump in the road. So switch to Allstate, save money, and be better protected from mayhem, like me.
Based on coverage and limits selected, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. In most states, prices vary based on how you buy. Allstate Bar and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Have you wanted to speak a new language but thought it'd be too difficult or take too much time? Then try Babbel. In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel teaches you conversations that you will actually use. With 14 languages and lesson topics like travel, business, relationships, and more, you'll learn what matters most to you. Babbel. Language for life. Learn a new language with ease. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's BABBEL.com.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports, the Friday edition. We're live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeena McGee, which is she. I'm Sidney Brown. Hey, that's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Lakeena McGee on the Twitter and at Lakeena_McGee on the IG.
Coming up later this hour, we'll be joined by our girl, Christine Manika from KXRB Radio in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, for her bi-weekly commentary in sports and much more. Lakeena, let's kick off hour number 2 of this program for Second City Sports by discussing the NFL. But before we do that, if you have a question or comment for us during our 60-minute extravaganza left in the show, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in questions and comments in the comment section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. Lakeena, as we said before, the NFL is a 12-month sport. And earlier this week, they didn't disappoint us. Tyreeke Hill, the All-Pro wide receiver, Super Bowl champion from a couple of years ago from the Kansas City Chiefs, has moved on to the Miami Dolphins in exchange for a future first and second round picks, and he also received a very well contract extension from the Dolphins, so he will get paid. So Tyreeke Hill, him and the Chiefs couldn't work out an extension, and this is the harsh reality of the salary cap where we're living in the National Football League. Patrick Mahomes has the biggest contract in league history. Kansas City's starting to find out the hard way that you got to build around others, but you cannot keep everybody. Your important parts will move on because you have to pay your star quarterback. But this is a good move for the Dolphins. But will Tua Tagovailoa take the next step in next year? Now since he has a big target, wide receiver target in Tyreeke Hill.
Yeah, that's gonna be the number one question because Tua's still improving. I mean, he's had his ups and downs these last couple of years, and look, when that kind of went down the pike, I was like, really? But of course, the money and such order came in. He wasn't going to get Devontae Adams' money with the Chiefs, so let's go to Miami. You got a quarterback who's a little bit younger, but again, we don't know what he is yet, so that's going to be another kind of question mark.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm sure Kansas City. I'm sure folks say we trust Kansas City to find the next Tyreeke Hill. It's going to be a tough task.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the wide receiver depth in this year's draft, we'll get into it as it gets closer and closer, but it's some good depth there. So we'll see if they can, pull something out. But yeah, this could end up being a win for both sides. But again, you're losing probably one of your best, players, the Chiefs. So, and I'm sure Pat Mahomes wasn't very pleased if he saw his Twitter. So, he kind of kept it, very low key and, classy, but I'm sure he wasn't, pleased with it, as long as his wife and his brother doesn't say anything about it. But, it's going to get, kind of interesting. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, look, we just got to wait to see who ends up, if both end up winning this trade.
So here's the thing for the Kansas City Chiefs and their wide receiver depth. I know Pringle is here with the Bears now on a 1-year deal. I know they have Marquez Valdez-Scantling, the former Packers wide receiver. He signed with the Chiefs for 1 year. I know they picked up Juju Smith-Schuster for a year. Yes. He was the former Pittsburgh Steelers All-Pro wide receiver. So they have names on the roster, but their offense is going to look very different next season for Mr. Mahomes and company.
Also, too, where does Travis Kelce fit into this? I mean, where does he fit in? Is he going to get some touches too? So yeah, that's another.
He's just creeping up on him too.
Yeah, and he's over 30 now, so you got to think that how much he has left in the tank. So yeah, they got the names. Scanlon they just picked up yesterday. Juju Smith-Schuster, we talked about it. last week. But yeah, I mean, but who would you rather have if you're a Chiefs fan? Would you rather have, the three guys we mentioned that are going to be a part of the team, or would you rather have, Tyreeke Hill back? I think you probably would go with the latter. But again,
exactly.
Yeah, we'll see. Especially in the AFC West. I mean, of course, we saw what the Raiders did. We saw what the Chargers have done and such. So yeah, that's going to be a really tough conference, and I feel like there's this it's going to be like a chess match here, especially once they start playing each other. Of course, Denver, of course, they've improved as well. So it's going to get very interesting in that conference, though. Are the Chiefs the favorites? We'll get into it once we do our previews, but there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered for all these teams.
And speaking of questions that needs to be answered, let's head back home to Chicago, where the Bears picked up another quarterback. This time is Northwestern's very own Trevor Siemian. Of course, Trevor Siemian has been bouncing around NFL teams for the last few years. He was with New Orleans last year. Actually didn't do that bad of a job before he suffered a season-ending injury after Jameis Winston, who returned to the team earlier this week on a one-year deal. Trevor Siemian is going to be Justin Fields is your first, your starter.
Mm-hmm.
And then Nick Foles, who's technically still here on the contract. Thank you, Ryan Pace. Boo. So it's going to be Trevor Siemian and Nick Foles battling out for the number 2 job.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, though. And I feel like, last year, of course, health is a factor, too. He actually did a pretty serviceable job, pitching in before he got hurt last year with the Saints. So that's going to be the number one question, too. I mean, that's sort of been like the thing, can he stay healthy? So, I mean, they get a serviceable backup. He's only 30, so it's not like, he's one of these older backups. But but yeah, I mean, what more can you say about the Bears? I guess they're trying to bring in more. You got they're definitely doing more of like a Chiefs, Colts like sort of thing. But again, we'll have to wait and see. But I'm not expecting much from the Bears this year. So.
And speaking of expectations, the Bears have picked up a couple of backup offensive linemen on a couple of one-year contracts. Lakeena, this tells me that they're really going to look heavy into drafting a couple of offensive linemen, especially with their second. Now they have 2 second-round picks in this upcoming year's draft. And so I think that head coach Matt Eberflus and GM Ryan Poles, they got a lot of work to do on that offensive line.
Well,
they're just bringing in bodies at this point.
Yeah, I'll say they needed bodies. Like that's the thing. Like they needed bodies. That's why they brought in, the tackle from. It looks like the Bills are not going to match that. So he'll be part of the Bears fold. And you got to think that you would think that Poles, since he was a former offensive lineman, would know what O linemen are. But the best O linemen are, again, we'll have to wait and see in that front. But I mean, look, I think these are like 1 year guys, so they probably only. Like I said, they just needed bodies on the roster. So. Yeah. Again, there's not really much to expect for the Bears this year. This is sort of like a transitional year. So, again, well, okay, you get more. Okay, you picked up, a couple. You give Siemian a couple of O-line, better O-line guys. Okay, great. So, okay, let's see what they can do with the draft, because you're not going to have a first-round pick unless you can, package those 2 second-rounders and try to get a first rounder, try to move up. But again, sort of another thing that you got to look at.
You listen to Second City Sports, the Friday edition. We're live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid, Lakeena here with you, talking Bears in the NFL. Our girl Christine Manika is coming up later on this hour with her bi-weekly sports commentary and more. Lakeena, just monitoring this press conference that just ended about 20 minutes ago. Deshaun Watson was officially introduced to the Cleveland media. And we talked about this on our last episode on Monday, Lakeena. There's a couple of quotes that I saw coming out of that press conference. Deshaun Watson said, "I've never done the alleged the things that people are alleged that people have said that I've done," and he also said that I had to earn the trust back from the fans in the community. From the couple of quotes that I read just now, it sounds like he said the right thing. He composed himself very well. He was joined by the Cleveland Browns GM and the Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski. Deshaun Watson, wherever it happens, we know he's not going to be charged criminally, so we dealt with that. But he still has some work to do PR-wise. But as well as I do, Lakeena, as soon as the Browns win ball games and Deshaun Watson gets back to his Pro Bowl self, all this will be long and forgotten.
Also, as long as he stays out of any more legal trouble, I think he'll
that
be
too,
fine.
yep.
And look, I know some people don't like that, but again, unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast. Apparently, the Houses weren't at that presser. I'm looking at it. I didn't watch it. I didn't want to watch it because it was just like, okay. And I know that he, another grand jury decided not to charge him in a different county in Texas. That news came out yesterday. Okay. Again, I don't. I mean, what's more? I mean, I know people have their opinions and such. I mean, for me, I'm just gonna keep it to the football side because
Yeah.
The legal stuff is over my head, and I'm not even going to try it. I'm not a lawyer, nor will I've said it multiple times on on various platforms. I'm not going to play one here, but once if they do win, assuming that he does get suspended, like 4 or 5 games, and he probably might. People will forget about it. I know some people will keep bringing it up because they've done it with other athletes, but what can you do at this point? I mean, I think look, unless you're a lawyer, I don't think you should kind of I'm not saying you should keep your legal opinions to yourself, but try not to play a lawyer if you're not really a lawyer unless you have a law degree. That's something that irks me, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I mean, it's not. I think the Browns. I think they feel like they had an opportunity to get Watson. I know, yes, we can get into the whole thing where they should have been vetted, they should have vetted the victim, the alleged victims, I should say, and such, it's just, again, I'm going to look at this from a football aspect of it. If he wins, if he struggles, people are going to be telling him to get out. That's just how it is.
Yep. And one last thing before we move on, Lakeena, how many games do you think the NFL is going to suspend him? I know some people say 8 games. I'm in the realm of the Tom Brady suspension template from 2016, 4 games. I think he'll get between 4 and 6 to start out the year, and then he'll resume his NFL career. What say you about? Do you think the NFL will do anything at all? Because Deshaun Watson set out last year, and I think he wants to tell the NFL, well, that was my quote unquote suspension last year.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the thing here. But I think to save face, I think the NFL will suspend him probably for 4 to 6. I think that's the same range I have. They're not going to get him 8 games because, like you said, he set out like all of last year, so that was sort of like the pseudo suspension. So it wouldn't look good, especially if since he didn't play last year, so it wasn't like he played for like the first few games and just out the rest of the season. He didn't play a whole year. So I think if they try to get him like half a season. Yeah, that's not going to, the PA is not going to be very happy with that. So I would say I think they're going to come right in and appeal that. So I think they'll do 4 to 6. This whole thing will be, I don't want to say over and done with, but I'm sure, days will probably, I don't want to say move on. I know that I don't want certain people, yelling at me about it, but that's just how it is. I know people don't like it, but that's just how it is. I'm sorry. I don't know what do you want to do? What do you want me to do about it? I can't do anything about it.
You listen to Second City Sports on the Friday edition. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid, Lakeena here with you. Let's move over to baseball, Lakeena. Let's go to the South Side with the White Sox. We're less than 2 weeks away. For the White Sox, we're exactly 2 weeks away, almost 2 weeks away from the start of the regular season for 2022. And many Sox fans are complaining, whining, and moaning on Twitter that Michael Conforto hasn't been signed yet. Of course, Michael Conforto is a right fielder, left-handed bat from the New York Mets. Of course, this ties into New York City Mayor Eric Adams lifting the vaccine mandate for the performers with athletes. That this affects the Brooklyn Nets, of course, with Kyrie, and of course the New York Yankees, allegedly Aaron Judge, who's not vaccinated, who's looking for a new contract with the Yankees, by the way. And Michael Conforto has not been signed yet. He's still technically a free agent. And we know that the White Sox have, even though it's not mandated from baseball, that the players have to be vaccinated from COVID-19. It seems to me that the rule might be in place for his big league clubs. It is left up to the individual clubs, including the White Sox. And we know that the story came out before spring training that the White Sox minor leaguers, the minor leagues are not unionized, that the minor leaguers were told to get their boosters or else they're not going to play. It seems like allegedly that may be the issue why Conforto has not signed with certain clubs, including with the White Sox. What say you about the situation?
Yeah, the rumors were, I think there have been like a couple, I know the White Sox, and there have been a couple other teams that are interested in him as well. The whole thing, with the vax mandates and such, I know that, the Mets, that's who he played for. He might go back to them, if they can find the money for him. So that could be why that's the holdup. I think White Sox fans need to kind of just chill. I mean, we're only like a few weeks away from the regular season starting, so I don't know like what more can they do but just wait. And I think like I'm sure he'll pick somebody because spring trade is almost over with. But look, he would be a good pickup for the Sox. I mean, but like I also said, I mean, there are other teams that are going to be vying for his services, so he might be weighing his options and such. Places where he can play right away. I mean, I'm sure like maybe the Texans team, that all the Texas teams, like Houston. I think I've heard his name being thrown around there. So he's still a top free agent. So there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be vying for his service once all this stuff sort of hammers out. But I think White Sox fans should kind of just chill. And like I said, we don't know what the kind of money he's asking for. Because is Jerry going to be willing to open a pocketbook? I mean, like he and Giolito, Reinsdorf, I mean, they're getting odds over like $200,000 in the arbitration thing. So I don't even know.
Yeah, Giolito's daddy kind of came out on Twitter yesterday. Said they're just a couple $1,000 apart, $100,000 apart. Well, we'll see what happens with that. We know the many clubs, including the White Sox, that they don't like to their players to get that money from arbitration. So and you can tell that if you read into the Lucas Giolito story, he wants this thing taken care of before the season starts, because this is an important year for him, not just for him, but for the ball club as well.
Yeah, Rick didn't mince words. His dad could be, he's classy about it, but he's not afraid to mince words when it comes to the White Sox and how they're playing. But it's not just him. I think Contreras with the Cubs, but we'll talk some news about them in a second. They're not going to buy Chelsea because there's something that came out about some of the Ricketts family and their investments. So don't worry, Cubs fans, they're not going to be buying Chelsea, the football club. But as far as
you tell me that they're broke.
I would say broke, but they're like just some other sort of weird things that have come up with some of their investments and whatnot. So that's a whole nother conversation for another episode. But the thing with Giolito, I mean, I can only imagine what the contract extension talk is going to be like, if this is going to be sort of thing that kind of falls apart for them. So I can only imagine what the contract extension talks with them are going to be like. But I'm sure it won't be a distraction. I'm sure they'll figure it out, because with the lockout and such, I mean, all this is being done like literally like with just a few weeks before spring training, and now before the regular season starts. So that's where all this is sort of like kind of manifesting. So I don't know. Hopefully this will be resolved pretty quick. But I feel like, I mean, I'm sure all of this will be sorted out. I know there were a couple other teams that that didn't have some stuff that their fault that are a little bit further apart, but I'm sure they'll all figure it out.
Let's stay with the White Sox for a moment, Lakeena, and we're talking about Michael Conforto. In right field is still a glaring hole there, and you still need another starter, because we saw starting pitching depth was tested with the White Sox last year, and we saw what happened with that, and especially come playoff time. But in right field, let's just say you don't get Conforto, I'm okay with it. If you get him, fine. But if you don't, that's okay. I like the platoon system of Adam Engel, Gavin Sheets, and Andrew Vaughn. You can get by with that until the trade deadline.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like I said, who knows what we'll be bringing up towards the trade deadline. I feel like maybe you've got guys that are more than capable of perhaps maybe holding down a forward, so you can probably get somebody if you don't get Conforto. But like I said before, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to be his numbers are once he weighs out his options.
Yeah, so let's say we'll see what happens with the right field situation with the White Sox. Their starting pitching is still a good step, but I would like for them to pick up another arm. I know Carlos Rodon, who played against the Sox the other day, he's now with the San Francisco Giants, but you still have Dylan Cease, you still have Giolito, Lance Lynn, who needs to have a bounce back year. He didn't look good toward the end of the regular season, especially in that playoff game against Houston. You still have him, and Dallas Keuchel, will he be trade bait at some point this year if he doesn't stay with the ball club for the whole year? And Michael Kopech, let's be real about it. We'll go deep more into it as we get closer to the start of the season. But he's going to be on the innings limit this year as your fifth starter.
Yeah, I mean, it will be interesting. Like I said before, depth is really what the issue, and they got some of that depth. They got, like I said, Joe Kelly, although you probably won't play for about a month, but like I said before, I think the Sox are, they should be okay with the team they have so far. Now, again, we'll see once the season starts. If you struggle early, especially with this condensed spring training, there you might have some guys that struggle early on. I want to warn White Sox fans about that. That could happen, but again, they should be able to find their rhythm as we get closer and closer to the season. Now as for like everything else, I mean, it'll be interesting to see like I said before, once we get into like deeper and deeper into baseball, but like, again, we'll see how like everything. Like I said, you don't know how these kids are going to be, especially with this condensed spring training. You don't know how. Look, some guys might struggle. Some of the top guys from both these leagues and teams might struggle during the regular season early on, especially in the first month. So I would say like give teams like a month, like 6 weeks, kind of like get into a rhythm. So I would like implore White Sox fans, Cubs fans, every fan of the MLB team, I think should just kind of chill for a little bit and just go with the flow. And I'm sure all these especially some of the top guys will figure it out.
You listen to Second City Sports on the Friday edition right here on Sports Zone Chicago. We're live in the 11 color city. Lakeena here with you. Lakeena, let's go to the north side. As I jokingly said, the Ricketts family is broke. I'm using air quotes for those listening back on the replay at War on Anger on our podcast. They're not going to buy the soccer club, and Wilson Contreras may be trade bait again.
It depends on who you ask. I know that they're kind of far. They're kind of like in the same situation as they are with Giolito and the Sox. They're kind of like, I think they're about like a 300,000-400,000 apart. I think last I saw. So we'll again Nico Horner, Patrick Wisdom, then could Contreras be kind of like trade bait. He's kind of like the last guy from it. Well, Hayward, they're not going to be able to trade Hayward with that contract still. So, but it'll be interesting. I think it'll be interesting where the Cubs are. I think they could definitely finish third with everything else. The Reds are basically their side, they're going to tank. The Pirates, again, you don't know what you're going to get with them. So I think the Cubs, I think they can kind of stay within that kind of like that third place spot. I think you can try to maybe build more, assuming that since they're not going to buy that soccer club, the Ricketts family not going to be able to buy that by Chelsea. So again, like I said, we'll depend on how the season goes. If he produces, he could try to maybe flip that and maybe perhaps get maybe a couple of guys to restock that minor league system again. But again, it's all going to depend on how they start the season.
Yeah, and also too, they need a couple of guys, a few guys to step up this year. Kyle Hendricks, he struggled last year. I know he's still considered ace on that staff. You brought in Marcus Stroman for 3 years from the New York Mets. He's very vocal, especially on social media. What do you expect out of those two?
Hopefully they can kind of sort of be that sort of like that, especially with Stroman being kind of like that veteran presence. Like you said, I mean, he's not afraid to. I mean, he's not afraid. He doesn't mince words. So I think especially if they struggle early on, he's gonna show his displeasure. Hendricks, hopefully he can go back to. I'm not saying that he could be like 2015, 2016 Hendricks, but if he can at least be like someone. You could be like at that level where before you got to that 2015, 2016 level. I think you'll be okay as a Cubs fan. Nico Horner, I know he had his struggles last year. Hopefully he can, get it going too this year. Patrick Wisdom's been very good. Like he's 30, remember, folks. So that's gonna be another thing you could use. Sort of, they're not, these guys aren't really young. The pitching, like I said before, I mean Stroman, I think can be, hopefully they can help. They got Clint Frazier too. The Cubs did on a veteran deal, so. Ian Happ's there as well. Rafael Ortega had it, was up and down last year. If they can get like some of those guys to kind of like sort of be productive, and Nick Madrigal, when we'll see him, he's back into the fold there playing at second base. So we'll see if he can kind of be the player that White Sox fans thought that he would be. So look, I think there's a lot of question marks for the Cubs. And I think anything else will probably be gravy. But if they can finish like in third place in the Central, which they should. You're in good shape if you're a Cubs fan.
All right, let's turn the page over back to basketball. Lakeena, I have not unfortunately watched any more minutes of the NCAA women's basketball tournament, but Iowa. I think we talked about this on Monday. Iowa was upset by Creighton and Don Staley's crew with South Carolina. I know they're one of the top. They were one of the top teams that expect to take home the title. What action have you seen from the ladies' tournament in March Madness?
There's been a lot of upsets. There's been a lot of upsets on the women's side. There's been a lot of double-digit upsets. South Dakota, coming out of nowhere. Well, not nowhere, but they've been around the last couple of years. They're up there. They're playing Michigan. Tennessee's back. Since I think since 2006, their first time back in the Sweet 16. I feel like Kelly Harper. I think she's got a nice recruiting class coming in. We'll see, give them the next couple of years. Hopefully they can be back to being like the Tennessee that we know and love. Notre Dame with Riel Ivy, of course, she won a national championship way back in the 90s. We'll see, they play North Carolina State tomorrow. IU and Connecticut. They actually, I believe IU beat UConn, but I think that was about Paige Becker. So we'll see how they do there. Those games are tomorrow, and tonight you got South Carolina. The aforementioned Donna Staley, her Gamecocks. They're going up against North Carolina. They got a great solid young player there in North Carolina. We'll see how that what shakes out there. Texas and Ohio State. That should be a fun one. I believe they played earlier this season, if I'm not mistaken. Creighton, they're going to the 2016 for the first time on the women's side. They play Iowa State. So it's gonna be like they're gonna be turning back and forth. A lot of Cyclones fans. So if you're a Cyclones fan, you're gonna be doing a lot of channel surfing tonight. Also, too, a defending champion Stanford going against Maryland. Not the first time these two teams have played each other. So it's starting to kind of shape up to be kind of like where they should be. I know you still got Creighton, you still got South Dakota. As a number, only double digit seeds. But everything else, I know you got a couple of 5s. You got like a 6 in Ohio State. All the rest are number 1s and 2s and 3s. But yeah, so it usually shakes out. It's sort of like a bad year for women's basketball, and the Rays have been very good too. So good for them. And look, I watch a little bit as much as I can, but I don't watch it as much, But I have been following it and all the stuff that's going on. So a lot of great stories coming out of it. So.
All right, making her big return to Second City Sports after a nice brief hiatus. She's our home girl during the football season with our football pick'ems, but during this off season, she's usually here every other week, giving us her views and thoughts on the sports world and more. Here's our home girl from KXRB Radio, Miss Christine, the Queen Manika. Hello, Christine.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's been kind of crazy this week. I had an extra couple of days in Chicago than what I was anticipating, and somehow I made it back to Sioux Falls.
Before we get into it, Christine, I know you have some big news regarding your sister. We know about it, but for those of you that don't know, tell us about it. We really are very proud of her.
Oh, well, thanks, guys. So the reason why I was back home in Illinois was to celebrate my sister getting her white coat from the University of Illinois Veterinary College of Medicine.
Yay!
So it was very exciting. It was a great ceremony. It was just a tough time getting out of Illinois on Monday.
Yeah, I know.
So I ended up not coming back here until really early in the morning on Wednesday. So it's been kind of a whirlwind the last couple of days. But yes, thank you for mentioning that. Very proud of her.
Yeah, while you were telling me about it offline, it was a crazy week. I know our weather hasn't been very cooperative there all week.
It wasn't even the weather. The plane came in late from Champaign, and they wouldn't hold my flight to Sioux Falls. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I know. This time of year it's just crazy. But yeah. But we're very proud of her. Give her a shout. Say hello.
I will. Yes.
Good like animal, oh gosh, veterinarians I think are a very underrated profession. So
sure, yeah.
We're about to head towards our last break of the show, Christine. We got a lot to discuss for you. Baseball is finally playing games back on the field. Movement around the Bears in the NFL. Basketball is happening. The Bulls. Some people are panicking. We'll get all your thoughts on those subjects and a whole lot more. As you're listening to the Friday edition of Second City Sports, we're live in living color on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's Lakeena. That's Christine. You listen to Sports Zone Chicago. Stay tuned.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago. NBA Thursday, the Bulls dropped their second straight 126-109 the loss at New Orleans. The Bulls are 42-31 with the setback. Zach LaVine led the scoring for Chicago with 39 points. Kobe White had 23. The Pelicans got 30 points from Devontae Graham, 25 from CJ McCollum, and a double-double from Jonas Valanciunas. Up next for the Bulls, they'll try and snap the skid tomorrow night when they visit Cleveland. The Blackhawks put a 2-game winning streak on the line tomorrow when they visit the Vegas Golden Knights. Chicago with a 4-3 win at Los Angeles yesterday. Alex DeBrincat had the shootout winner. Colin Delia made 43 saves through overtime in just his second start of the season. Spring training Thursday, the Angels beat the Cubs 5-4. Today, it'll be the Cubs taking on the Rockies. The Giants beat the White Sox 9-6. Today, the Sox will face the Mariners. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Nobody protects you from mayhem like Allstate. I'm a speed bump. Did you hear what I said? I'm a speed bump. And if you have cut-rate car insurance, the cost to reattach your muffler could really be a bump in the road. So switch to Allstate, save money, and be better protected from mayhem, like me.
Based on coverage and limits selected, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. In most states, prices vary based on how you buy. Allstate Bar and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Have you wanted to speak a new language but thought it'd be too difficult or take too much time? Then try Babbel. In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel teaches you conversations that you will actually use. With 14 languages and lesson topics like travel, business, relationships, and more, you'll learn what matters most to you. Babbel. Language for life. Learn a new language with ease. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's BABBEL.com.
Welcome back to the last segment of the show, last segment of the week, right here on Sports Zone Chicago, Second City Sports, real live and in living color, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid, that's Lakeena, that's Christine Manika from KXRB Radio. If you have any questions or comments or any of our topics during today's show, we're in the last stretch of the show in our less than a half hour or so. You can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in questions or comments in the comment section of the kingdom and get them up on the screen for you. Let's start off with baseball. Christine, last time you were with us, baseball was still going at it. Players and owners are still going at it off the field. Now they're in an abbreviated 3-week period of spring training. Next week was supposed to be the original opening day, but that's been delayed for many teams. Thursday, April 7th. For the White Sox is April 8th. And those games that were missed during next weekend will be made up as part of doubleheaders during the regular season. What's your thoughts on all this? And we're going to have labor peace for at least the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think they finally woke up and just said, okay, we have to do something to bring this sport back. I forget what we all said, but we said, oh, they're not going to let opening day totally, go on the wayside. And they did. But we were all kind of in the same ballpark when we were thinking, it's going to come back in April. It's not going to happen in March, but it's definitely going to happen in April. I'm just happy I can finally, break out that new Jermaine Dye jersey that I got for Christmas. So,
I know you talked about that last time you were with us. What do you think about the White Sox and some of the moves they've made?
I approve of all of them so far. This team, I think they are going to be in it to win it. That's for sure. When they got Joe Kelly from the Dodgers, I'm like, oh man, that's massive. That's a massive arm to have on your roster. And my grandpa and I, we like to send each other emails and text messages about what's going on with baseball and whatnot. And I sent him about Joe Kelly. He's like, I don't know who that is. I'm like, Grandpa, he's a stud. Like he's going to change the game completely, I think, for the White Sox when it comes to pitching.
And we talked about this before we brought you on, Christine. Michael Conforto, the right field free agent, the left-handed bat of the New York Mets, he still remains unsigned. And I know many White Sox fans on White Sox Twitter, it depends on who you follow and talk to, they want him signed now because he solves, I'm using air quotes here, he solves what the White Sox need as far as the left-handed power bat. I said if Michael Conforto is signed by the White Sox, fine. But I'm okay with the platoon of Gavin Sheets and Adam Engel and Andrew Vaughn. Now, the rumor has it that the reason why Conforto hasn't signed because he's unvaccinated. We don't know if that's true or not. But should the White Sox just go and get Conforto no matter what? Or let's just sit back and say, hey, I'm okay with the platoon of Sheets and Engel and Vaughn. Do you think the Sox must get Conforto at all costs? What are your thoughts on it?
If you were asking me this maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I'd say, yeah, go for it. But right now, I think we have a great roster. Gavin Sheets, when he came up last year, I had the opportunity to watch him play a few times, and that's another great player, another great bat on the roster for sure. And Vaughn, he was really picking up some speed towards the end of the season, so I expect that momentum to continue. And hopefully we'll get a better season out of Kopech. He didn't have the best games the last couple of games during the season. And when I saw him, I was highly disappointed. And I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't the Kopech that I was expecting to see. I was expecting to see 1, 2, 3 lights out. And I hope that maybe he's got his head on straight this season. That's for sure. But more importantly, I think throughout the MLB, there's been a lot of interesting deals going on. The one that sticks out in my mind, which I don't think anybody saw coming, was Chris Bryant going to the Colorado Rockies, or even Anthony Rizzo staying with the Yankees.
Yeah.
The fact that the Rockies gave Chris Bryant 6 years, that's pushing it for me, in my opinion, because, the Cubs already had him when he was at his prime pretty much. I'm not saying that he doesn't have, gas in the tank. He does. I'm just saying that he's not the player from where he started. And with Anthony Rizzo, he has a lot of connections in Chicago, a lot of ties there. His organization is still based out of there. And a lot of people thought that they had another chance to bring him back. But unfortunately, money talks. And when you are being asked to stay on the team like the Yankees, I think you'll take that opportunity, because the Yankees, they're like the hierarchy when it comes to baseball teams. They're the OGs. They're the GOATs. So, of course, you want to be on the team like the Yankees. Again, not saying that the Cubs aren't. The Yankees just have that elite status, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Talking about another, league that has a crazy off season is the NFL. Now we'll get to all the crazy.
Which one should I start with first for the trades?
Well, you know what? Let's start with the Bears first. Then we can go, to the trades. Dakota Dozier. They have a 1-year deal with him. A veteran lineman. Then of course DeAndre Houston Carson. They brought him back. They traded Khalil Mack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they signed Trevor Siemian late last night. It was official this morning. So which they needed bodies. We talked about Sid. I talked about right before he came on. They needed bodies. So what do you think about some of the moves the Bears have made so far?
It's like what we were talking about a few weeks ago. I'm not surprised that they traded Khalil Mack, just because it gives the Bears a little bit more of a cap space when it comes to money and how much they can spend and stuff like that. I know a lot of Bears fans were disappointed in it, but I just said, they had to do something. And unfortunately, Khalil wasn't really doing it the last couple of seasons. And I think that just shows where Poles and where Eberflus is, just because, they're trying to make a statement and they're trying to say, hey, we're not afraid to make these big decisions. I think the one that I can't say that I was shocked in, but I was shocked. The two that they let go was Danny Trevathan and then Tyreeke Cohen, because there was so much up in the air with Cohen saying, is he going to come back? Is he going to, hang out for another season? And the fact that they said he failed a physical, it's like, what was this guy doing during his rehab,
Yeah, we talked about it before. The last time we had you on, Christine, and it was puzzling to me, to all of us, and saying, what's been happening the whole time?
Right.
And I don't want to, you don't want to blame everything on Matt Nagy, but he had a hand in it, and it was just a mess all the way. I think it was just from this new group. They were saying, hey, let's clean house, have a clean slate, and let's start all over again. Yeah. And that's the way I like. That's the way the organization should do it. Do it right. And now it's all about Justin Fields, because he's under his rookie deal for the next few years. And this is how you do business in the NFL. Win a Super Bowl with your quarterback on the rookie contract, because even though the salary cap is going to go up every year, the price tag for these starting quarterbacks are going to go up even more, just as Aaron Rodgers, which we'll get to in a second, and as Patrick Mahomes, who got that big deal before the start of last season. So this is how you do business in the NFL. It's ugly, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. I think one of the best moves so far is Russell Wilson going to Denver.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. I think that's a great transition, just because the stadiums in Seattle and in Denver, they're very similar playing situations. You're in like this extreme environment, and I think that suits Russell Wilson well. And I think Denver is determined to have a comeback year, to be one of the top teams. They were at the beginning of last year, and then slowly but surely they kind of trickled off a little bit. They weren't bad towards the end. They just weren't where they were to start.
Yeah, what how about some of the other trades, some of the other crazy trades?
I'm so happy for my man Mitch Trubisky, man. He deserves it. I think that poor kid had a rough time in Chicago. I think the fans, didn't give him that much of a chance just because, Van Nagy didn't give him a chance on the field, and he didn't play to his strengths, in my opinion. So I'm happy that he's going to go to a team with a stable coach, a stable, organization, and just a really good fan base. And even when they made that announcement, I think all the Steelers fans were behind it too, just because it gives them more space to say, get some more people on the O-line or get more people on the D-line. So they were happy to see that. And I think, I don't know if I can speak for the rest of Chicago, but I think we're all happy to at least see him get another chance at a starting position. The one that surprised me, and I still can't shake this, Von Miller going to the Bills for what? A 6 or 7 year contract. Yep. That's pushing it for the man. That is pushing it for him, because I think those years are kind of behind him a little bit. The good years are behind him as he's starting to get more in depth with his position. I think Tyreeke Hill going to Miami, that's a smart move on the Chiefs' part, just because they probably got the best years out of him too. And I think he's going to benefit really well in Miami. I knew Tom Brady was coming back. I knew it. No way.
So you weren't fooled.
No, absolutely not. I'm like, there is no way. And we talked about this when he made the announcement too. There is no way that Tom Brady is leaving the NFL like that. There just isn't. So when I saw it, I was literally on Twitter once he made that post, and I thought I was reading things. I'm like, wait a minute. Is he coming back? Like, is this happening? But now there's like, oh, he could go to Miami. And it's like, just stop it. I think he's staying with the Buccaneers. He put us through the ringer this long for 2 months. I think I read that his retirement lasted less than Kim Kardashian's marriage to Chris Humphries. So, well, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where that started. Yeah, I've been seeing it trending. I'm like, wait, what? Why would he go to the?
I don't think he's staying with the Buccaneers. Like, there's no way. He held out for this long, and then I think the reason, and this could be right too, I think the reason why he decided to come out of retirement, was because free agency was starting to open up, and this gives the Bucs and even the players on the fence a little bit more of an edge to say, hey, come back to the Bucs. Like, now we have Tom Brady again,
Yeah. Before I ask you my next question, Christian, I'll piggyback off your point about Tom Brady. Let's be honest here. Most of the guys that came down there because of Brady, most of them are going to come back. We haven't heard Rob Gronkowski's name yet, but I guarantee he's going to come back for at least one more year. And look at the landscape of the NFC right now. Of course, Carson Wentz, your guy, has been traded to the Washington Commanders now.
Guy. I don't know.
But Carson Wentz is now with Washington. Think Brady looked at the landscape of the NFC. Yes, Aaron Rodgers is back, but that team is totally different due to salary cap constraints. Russell Wilson's now in the AFC. The Cowboys are the Cowboys, but right now they're not a threat. And so, and plus Tom Brady has one more year left on that contract. Let's see if I can do it again before I really call it quits.
Right, exactly. And I think there's just been so many changes with quarterbacks within the last couple of weeks. I think I wish Wentz stayed on the Colts just because I think that was a good fit for him. But we'll see what Matt Ryan does with that team. They're a young group, and I think that's what Matt needs. I think he needs a little extra momentum and a little extra pep in his steps. So that could be a good move for the Colts.
Yeah, he definitely brings that veteran presence, I feel
like.
So I think that should help them in a lot. What about the Devontae Adams trade, to the Raiders? I think people knew that probably would come because after Rodgers signed that deal, but to the Raiders, it turns out he would be reunited with Derek Carr. They played together at Fresno State. What do you think about that trade?
I think it says that there's something else going on with the Packers organization, Because you would think a guy like that would stick with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, saying, "Oh yeah, like we're gonna be all the way to the top to the NFC." But I think there's something else brewing there, and maybe Devontae just wanted a different opportunity. And the Raiders, they were good last year. They had the opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. So on his part, I think he was just ready for a change and ready for a new scenery. Get out of that cold weather in Green Bay.
Speaking of one more former Chicago Bear, Allen Robinson, the wide receiver.
I am so mad
me
about
too.
that.
Yeah, he's going to the Los Angeles Rams to defend his Super Bowl champs on a 3-year deal, $45 million. $30 million of that is guaranteed. It looks like Odell Beckham Jr. may be playing somewhere else, or if he comes back to the Rams, it's going to be a lesser paycheck. But I'm really happy for Mr. Robinson, especially the crap that he dealt with last year with the head coach and in the front office, giving the franchise tags. We told you on the show that they would do, and not giving him a contract extension. I'm just so happy for Mr. Robinson. He's going to play on a Super Bowl caliber winning team, and the Rams could win another Super Bowl or two during his time there.
Sure, and I agree with that. But at the same time, I wish Poles and I wish Eberflus fought for him. I really do, just because that was one of the key offensive guys right there. So when I saw that, I kind of lost a little bit of respect for that front office. But again, it shows that they're not afraid to make those types of moves, no matter what the backlash is.
Yeah, we'll see what they can do. I mean, a lot of bodies, I guess. So I hope A-Rod prospers over in Los Angeles. Let's go to the hard court for a second. We'll start with college first. How's your brackets?
Horrible.
Join the club.
Kill it, fire.
I mean, I think this has been the worst year for brackets, because right within the second day, it's like, yep, no one's perfect anymore. It's over.
Right. Yeah, who's your Final Four? I guess your new Final Four, I guess.
Gosh. I hope Kansas, it's been a while for them. I hope Kansas gets in. I hope Duke can continue this run like we were talking about. They didn't have the best season, but let's hope something can come out of it. I saw that, Sid. You got to give a little bit to Coach K.
Yeah. We've seen that all over Twitter. He's not the only one that feels that way, Christine.
Oh yeah, and for the women's side of things, our University of South Dakota down in Vermillion, they're in the Sweet 16
yes, they are.
right now.
First time ever. Yeah,
thought that was going to happen. The first time ever. So good for those girls. I think their game is just going here, actually, or it's about to happen. But yeah, good for them. That's for sure.
We're joined by our homegirl, Christine Manika from KXRB Radio, right here on Second City Sports Friday edition. We're live in the living color on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. It's Lakeena. It's Christine. Christine, let's stick with basketball. Let's go to the hardwood in the NBA. The Chicago Bulls, 42-31. They've been in a funk ever since the All-Star break. Alex Caruso came back a couple of weeks ago. They lose a ugly game at New Orleans last night. They beat Toronto on Monday at home. But what is your forecast for the Chicago Bulls as we head towards the playoffs?
What's the saying? You can win against a really good team, but you can lose against a really bad team. Is that the saying? Something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
I feel like that's what's kind of happening to the Bulls right now. Now, I have to admit, Tristan Thompson, he has given them a little bit of an energy boost and a little bit more of like a momentum for the team. But, I think they need another year in order to get a championship. I really think that they do. I think they're going to make the playoffs and go far, but I think they need one more extra year just to fine-tune everything before they can get back on top.
And the injuries, too. What about the rest of the NBA? Who are your favorites right now?
Maybe things can change for the Nets, especially with Kyrie Irving, potentially coming back now since New York is kind of rolling back on their vaccine mandate. So that could be a game changer there to see what he can actually do for the team. The Lakers at this point are a lost cause for this year, unfortunately. So if you're a Lakers fan, I apologize. I think Golden State, they could do it again. I can see somehow Miami coming back into it. So it's really up for grabs. And like I said, I think the Bulls at least have a chance for a good run at the playoffs for sure.
Let's go back to the NFL and talk about the broadcasting carousel. Of course, I was listening to Troy Aikman. He was
another issue going on.
I was listening to him on the Sports Illustrated Media podcast. For those of you who haven't heard the interview, it was very insightful. Go listen to it. But we know that Al Michaels, he'll still do 1 or 2 games for NBC, but he's the new voice of Thursday Night Football on Amazon. Of course, Kirk Herbstreit will continue to do college football for ESPN, but he's going to be their new analyst for Thursday Night Football. It looks like Greg Olsen, former Bear, and Kevin Burkhardt will be moved from the number 2 to the number 1 team at Fox, since Fox will have the Super Bowl next year. Of course, Joe Buck goes from Fox to ESPN to call Monday Night Football with Troy Aikman. What do you think about all these carousel moves in the NFL broadcasting world?
Given the fact that Fox is hosting the Super Bowl next year, I am really surprised that Joe Buck would make that sort of a move, knowing that they have the Super Bowl next year. I'm surprised that Troy Aikman even took that offer too. NBC is going to look different. You know, that whole Sunday night broadcast team, the team that we've known for X amount of years, it's going to look different. And to fill those shoes of veteran broadcasters, that's a tough task in itself, because you don't want to make the wrong decision, if that makes sense. I'm curious to see what Erin Andrews is going to do in all this mix, because Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, those were her guys for, I think, almost 10 years, something like that. Maybe.
Yeah, she's been at the company. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if she'll stay with Fox, or maybe she'll make the jump to a different station, or do a streaming service like everybody seems to be doing.
Yeah, that seems to be the trend, because Lisa Saunders has that on lock. Sideline reporter for Monday Night Football, she has that on lock, so she's not going to be able to go back there. I'm talking about Erin Andrews. So yeah, she might look. She hosts a very successful podcast with herself and Carissa Thompson, and Calm Down. So that's a good podcast. So. Yeah, they might. Yeah, she might end up doing like going to Amazon, because they don't have a sideline reporter yet. I don't think they've announced one yet. So could she go over there? Maybe, who knows? But yeah, it looks like Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olsen are the favorites to be the new number 1 team, especially like you said, Christine. Fox is going to have 2 of the next 3 Super Bowls. So I think you have a great seasoned pro like Burkhardt and a young guy like Greg Olsen. They can kind of feed off that. They can kind of be the new Buck Aikman tandem there.
And I like Greg. I think he was a great player, and I think he's a great analyst. It will come in time for sure. I think last year was his first real season doing something like that. So it will come in time. He wasn't bad in my opinion.
Sticking with football, Christine, before we move on, Deshaun Watson, he was introduced to the Cleveland media today. Of course.
Topic.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
but
Right.
we're not going to get into the legal stuff. As Lakeena said, we're not lawyers. We don't pretend to be one, so we're going to leave the legal issues out of it. But of course, Baker Mayfield it will be on the move. That's for sure. Where do you see in your opinion, who's the favorite landing spot for Baker Mayfield? You have my sleeper team is the New York Football Giants. You shouldn't trust Daniel Jones, but other places have Seattle is the favorite. And you have the New York Giants. Where you see Mr. Baker Mayfield landing before the season starts?
Yeah, that's a tough one. We still don't know what's going on with the 49ers yet either with Jimmy G. I know he's just getting through surgery right now and going through the recuperation process, but that's a tough one. I could see him being in Seattle. I can definitely see that. I don't want him with the Giants, because that just sets you up for failure right there. So I don't think the Giants would be the right move. I'd like to have him on the Bears. Why not? Why not veteran be, someone leading, Justin Fields with that?
Yeah, that should be an interesting one too. Probably going outside sort of the major sports, sort of the big news in tennis. Ashley Barty has retired, earlier this week, which kind of came out of nowhere. Only 25, 3 Grand Slam titles. She did win the Aussie Open, for the first time in like 40 some years, on the women's side. Seeing all the tributes between, Serena, was shocked, but she wasn't surprised. Some people say maybe she should might retire too eventually. Rafael Nadal. A lot of things sort of came out. What do you think about that announcement?
I think it's a lot of trend that I've been seeing in a lot of athletes that are around my age. Maybe they're burnt out. You know, maybe they just realize that they don't want to be in the spotlight as much as they wanted it at the start. Maybe she's just not hungry anymore. I'll be honest, I don't really pay attention to tennis as much as I should. So maybe she was just burned out and it was time for her just to take a break.
Last few minutes left of the show right here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid, Lakeena, and Christine with you. Let's go back to baseball. Christine, the White Sox released their bobblehead schedule for this upcoming season. It's part of their giveaways.
Let them all sit. Are you going to catch them all?
I'm trying. Well, something to that I'll get to in just a second. But here's their bobblehead schedule giveaways. Saturday, April 16th versus Tampa Bay at 1:10. Liam Hendricks wearing the Southside black jersey bobblehead.
Like
so that's coming up in a couple of weeks.
Like a big dog.
Yep. Saturday, May 14th versus the Yankees at 6:10. The Tim Anderson Field of Dreams bobblehead.
Hey, there we go.
Okay.
I like that one too.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Saturday, June 25th versus Baltimore at 1:10. We have the Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert. I got this Eloy bobblehead. So you have two players in one bobblehead. If you remember, if you remember that play from a couple years ago.
Sure.
I think it was last season. Eloy was standing behind with his arms folded like this as Luis Robert happened to catch a fly ball. So that's going to be a bobblehead for White Sox fans. Monday, July 4th at 7:10 versus the Minnesota Twins. Paul Konerko, Superman bobblehead, the first 12,000 fans.
Okay, that's cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. And Saturday, July 23rd versus the Cleveland Guardians, formerly known as the Indians, at 6:15 p.m. on Fox. Yasmani Grandal, as they call him, the Yasmanian Devil, he has a bobblehead day.
Okay.
Yep. So those are bobblehead promotional schedules for the White Sox for this season. And yours truly has a major announcement involving the White Sox. Yours truly will be spending his 20-game package at this place. I'm holding up a t-shirt for those of you listening back on the replay on the podcast. Comiskey Park. You know, I don't call that corporate name. Yours truly has signed up for season tickets for the weekend 20-game package.
Wow.
So I'm going to get a couple of those bobbleheads.
Yeah.
2 of those bobbleheads. Oh, that Eloy Robert one. That should be hilarious. that was a gift.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You might as well market it. I think it was a gift everywhere when that happened.
Right.
So might as well make a bobblehead out of it. I know golf is the closest to your heart to Christine. Phil Mickelson will not be playing in the Masters this year. I think it'll be the first time. I think that's like the early '90s since he hasn't been there. Of course, some people were wondering. Of course, all this has been going on with his gambling and wanting to start a league and such. I mean, that the whole thing is we haven't really talked about it, but like the whole thing is just very weird to me with the thing going on with Phil and the rest of all that.
Yeah, I had to, when I first saw stuff, what was it, a couple of weeks ago, him saying remarks about this new league, I had to ask my boyfriend about it because I'm like, what is this? What is he saying? So I think it's surprising for him just because I don't think he anticipated getting so much backlash out of it. But when you make a comment like that, it's like, what do you expect? I mean, is he wrong about what he said about the PGA? Not entirely, but I don't think you should say I'm going to join this league over here. That's just taboo right now, right there. That's kind of a red line.
And going back home with the news from the United Center, starting tonight with the regional finals. Of course, we mentioned the Kansas Jayhawks. Christine, they're here in Chicago, and it looks like if they win, they'll be celebrating here in Chicago on Sunday afternoon, late Sunday night, if they win tonight and Sunday to clinch the Final Four. The United Center has also lifted their vaccine requirements, so you do not have to show proof of a vaccine cards or a negative COVID test, but masks are optional. It's not required, but it's optional. So for those of you that have not been vaccinated, or a negative COVID test. It does not matter now. The United Center has lifted that rule. It starts today with the NCAA events. It also goes into effect for future Bulls games and Blackhawks games as well.
Yeah, I think it's about time. I think we're starting to, I should say, I think Chicago is starting to finally learn how to live with the virus, because it's still there. You know, there's still going to be this BA2. There's a new variant out there. But I think, you know, the city is finally in that phase of living with it, which where the heck have they been? Everybody's been living it for the past couple of years. But
yeah.
It's like what I said at the beginning of this pandemic. It's your choice whether or not you want to get vaccinated. You do whatever you want to do. You do whatever you feel is best for you and your body and your family and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's time for everyone to kind of start returning back to normal.
I think we all agree there. So to finish off here, what are you guys looking forward to this weekend?
Catching up on sleep and cleaning.
Spring cleaning.
Lost a lot of that this week.
Hey, look, nothing wrong with spring cleaning. Of course, you gotta love it. Of course, you know, with the, of course, you know, you got the women, men's and women's, you know, both seeing, you know, double-digit TV increases, which is awesome for both sides. You got that going on. You've got the match play going on too for all you golf fans. Also, the U.S., you know, coming out to the wire with the last day of qualifying, so they needed some help to get to the World Cup after we know what happened with Italy yesterday. So that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, a lot of stuff going on this weekend. What about you, Sid?
Of course, March Madness, the Bulls, and be honest with you, I'm waiting for the regular season to start for baseball. We got 2 weeks left now.
Yeah, you got about 2 weeks, so it'll come soon enough, though. Patience, guys. Because look, we had to wait this long, so it's coming. It's coming. With that said, you can follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter and at Keenan_McGee on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sydney Brown, on the Twitter and the IG at CK80. Once again, at CK80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. We'd like to thank Rob Schaefer from NBC Sports Chicago. He's their Bulls guy for hopping on the show today. Of course, our girl, the queen, Christine Manika from KXRB Radio. Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Make sure you follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast at War on Anchor, and you can follow War Media on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
And make sure you catch Second City Sports every Monday, every Friday, live from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. One more again, as you kids would say. Catch Second City Sports every Monday, every Friday, from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, live and in living color, right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
All right, I know it's a little cooler here in this early spring, time in the Midwest, but you know what, though? Enjoy the games and all the matches going on this weekend. There are a lot, going on all sides. We talked about it. If you're not gonna get vaccinated, wash your hands, wear a mask, and just be good to each other. For Sid and Christine, I'm Lakeena. This is Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, and we'll see you next week.
Bring on baseball! Holla!